Hello, good evening, and welcome to another edition of the CantinaMX podcast. I think we're up to 132 shows. A show that started out as Los Cachirules, the 2-0 podcast. We had a very special 7-0 edition of the podcast back in the summer 2016. The 2-0 podcast, and then, of course, the CantinaMX podcast, which is where you are tonight. Glad to have you with us this evening. My name is John Jagu. We have a very, very special show tonight because we're gonna talk. We're gonna actually be nice to Chivas tonight. Something we don't do on the show very often. Even the Chivas fans aren't nice to Chivas on the show. But we're gonna be nice to Chivas tonight in their big win in Toronto in the CONCACAF Champions League. Also, we're talking Estadio Azul. Chiquis, right before we got on the air, Albert Campa was saying, "I'm so sad because this is the last game that it's going to be played at the Estadio Azul. It's got a really unique history, the Estadio Azul. We'll discuss that tonight. Probably some stuff you don't know, and then we'll also talk a little about Liguilla, and then we'll end the show about the Pacto de Caballeros and whether or not it's going to go away and if players are going to be able to get the free agency that they have long coveted. We'll cover all that. And, of course, we have an interview, how could I forget, with SI.com's Luis Miguel Chegaray. He is the head of their Spanish language and Latino content and is also one of the co-hosts on Planet Football on SI TV. So very, very much looking forward to talking to him about Peru and their chances in the upcoming World Cup and some other little odds and ends in the world of soccer. So we're glad to have him on as well. But we do have with us this evening, joining us from South Los Angeles, a man who just got back from making Indian headdresses in Coachella. They were so good they decided to call the name Coachella to Coachella. Joel Aceves joins us from Los Angeles. Coachella, that's right. How are you doing, Joel?
Pretty good, John. I just want to say, for a brief moment, we were the 2-1 podcast.
That's right. the
Yeah.
2-1 podcast. Well,
it was after
you're absolutely correct.
The CONCACAF Champions Cup, if I'm not mistaken.
I believe. Actually, it was after the Columbus game. It was the when the Mexico won in Columbus 2-1.
Oh yeah, you're right. Never mind.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it was.
But you're right.
It was in Chivas, yeah. Se quebró la maldición.
You're absolutely correct.
Se quebró yeah. So yeah, 2-0. We couldn't use it no more.
That's right. So we had to change the name of the show, and that's what we put in. And I was hoping it would be the podcast, the Caballeros, but the people spoke and said it was CantinaMX podcast.
It's true.
Was what won, and I think it works. I think it works for us, and I'm actually enjoying, if you don't mind, and Joel. Well, first of all, I have to ask you. We'll get to Chiquis in a second. And I know we'll have to ask Chiquis this question, but I will ask you what has the barkeep rustled up for you this evening, Joel?
I have a Stella, some Belgian brew.
Stella Artois.
Es lo que estaba en el refri.
Is that what what all the youths down in South Los Angeles drink?
Nah,
mi Stella.
You know, it was me regalaron vasos, John. There was a little truck, and they're like, if you buy a 12, I'll give you 4 big chalices.
Joel, you're not saying that a couple of cases fell off the truck, are you?
No compré.
All right. Just checking. Well, I myself I'm also usually I have a Victoria Modelo, but today it's kind of a big day. We had a good day here on the podcast. I'm actually celebrating with a little bourbon.
Are you celebrating that Pumas finally won?
I am indeed.
Delicious bourbon, brownest of the brown liquors. So tempting. What's that? You want me to drink you, but I'm in the middle of a trial.
Anyway, yes, so I am enjoying a glass of bourbon. With us also in Kyle, Texas, who, along with me, enjoyed, frankly, a spectacular day in Central Texas. The weather could not have been better, is Albert El Chiquis Campa joining us. Albert, how are you, sir?
What's up, Juan? Yeah, doing good.
Yeah.
That's
And Joel is right, Chiquis. We finally earned the right to celebrate because Pumas actually won a game. They got to a very critical plateau in numbers, which was getting to 20 points. Very big for Pumas to get that win over Puebla. But that's not the biggest win of the weekend. Not or over the past week. Not by a long shot. We do have to send it down to our correspondent in Mexico City, Lady Aguila. Let's see what she has to say about what happened over the past week.
Primero que nada, hay que felicitar a Chivas porque ganaron bien. La neta, hay que dejarnos de tonterías.
I don't think Lady Aguila could have said it any better. Joel, Chivas ganaron y ganaron bien. Got the 2-1 win over Toronto, where no one was no le daba ni un quinto a Chivas, Joel. Not even in Mexico.
No. Even here, we talked about how Toronto were favorites, and Chivas they took the risk of just playing with the suplentes in the league, which they still had a fighting chance, and they tanked it. And there's a lot of criticism, but it's a risk that's paying off.
It is. Well, Chivas is a team that doesn't, they don't have a roster of, 19, 20, 21 guys which one would consider quote unquote first teamers to play 2 tournaments. So if they were going to play 2 tournaments, they had to make a decision.
Well, yeah, I'm going to say sacrifice, not risk. It was a sacrifice, which I'm hearing they're going to do it again because they have the Clásico coming up against Atlas. And the word is
what's going to happen. You know what's going to happen, right? I don't have to tell you. I'll have to tell you what's going to happen. Why don't you tell everyone what's going to happen?
Well, I mean,
who's going to win?
You know what?
Con suplentes, Joel, who's going to win?
They took the last one. They took the last one, and this is a special Clásico for Atlas because I believe it's the last one that Marquez is playing. So it's his last game at the Jalisco.
That's right.
And they're gonna go all out. And I think under their new coach, they haven't lost a game.
So let me ask you again, what's gonna happen?
No, Magana Chaplas. They're gonna.
You think so? Huh?
I saw an ad. You know what I saw an ad, and it was talking about. It was like an actual billboard that the team posted up in Jalisco, and it said, "Who needs championships when you have clásicos?" I'm gonna look for it, but it's something along those lines. So I mean, it just goes to show how much that game means for them.
Well, I just, I think because of the fact that it is Rafa's last game, and they're gonna, I just have a feeling it's gonna be 1-0 feo, but 1-0 Chivas, 1-0 Chivas, 1-0 Chivas. But anyway, so now one thing I will say about, I know that there were folks, including me, who said that, and rightly so, that Toronto were the favorites, and they still are. It's, I mean, it's not like Chivas has got this thing in the bag. I mean, Toronto can still. I mean, it won't. They don't have to do all that much in order for them to get an advantage. But we did say also on this podcast that several of us said that there are things that Chivas could do to get the result, and I think that once again, I'm sure, Almeida, as part of his weekly routine, probably, maybe on the drive to the office on Monday, downloads on iTunes the CantinaMX podcast. And and compares his strategies with what he wants to do and the advice that is given to him on the show. And I mean, it was pretty obvious to me that he took it all to heart, and Chivas was able to the recipe that they used for the win was outstanding. Get an early. I mean, they couldn't have gotten an earlier goal. They scored in the first minute of the game. And the guy that scores it is a guy that has to have a good game in order for them to win, which is Pizarro, and he ends up having a terrific game. And now they did allow an equalizer, but then they got another goal on a set piece that frankly was the pura chiripa. But you know what? It goes in. It's a final. Who cares? And on top of it, it's snow. They do it in the snow. So I mean, it's like they went beyond the wall. and did what they had to do, and now they're coming back through the gates.
Overconfidence on the side of Toronto. Coming in as underdog can sometimes be advantageous.
Now, one thing I hope that Rigo joins us a little later, Chiquis, but he pointed out, and rightly so, that Toronto let Chivas play a little more. I mean, New York Red Bulls did nothing of the sort. They pressured Chivas the entire 90 minutes of both legs. I mean, they had somebody on a player the minute that they had the ball. They did not let them walk around and piddle and tiki-taka, do all that stuff. They did not let Chivas do any of that. And Toronto kind of let Chivas play. They both let each other play their game. And and again, in a situation like that, it seemed like that played a little more into Chivas' favor. And on top of it, at least for me, the players that had to have good games in order for Chivas to get the result had to be their best players. And in this case, it was. I think it was Pizarro and then Orbelin, who was outstanding in the midfield. The best game he's played in a year and a half in the midfield, or at least in a year. And then Pulido, not necessarily for his goal, but he had a great defensive play. He held the ball up when he had to hold it up. I mean, it was a smart game, which is why I think Joel, that if Almeida wants it, he could stay at Chivas for a while. I think that he's earned the right to, maybe be that guy that gets to stay for 5 or 10 years.
Yeah, I mean, that would be a big win. Just because it's at the international stage, and like we said before, they took away. He was going to be a Libertadores, which was I think it was a massive loss for a club like Chivas with Mexican players. Where at that tournament you do well, and your value just goes up. The European scouts are going to value you that much more. So yeah, it was a very unfortunate, but to be at the Clubs World Cup, that's like that vitrina that Chivas hasn't had in a while, and I think just because all that he has won, all the titles he's been winning, he's a fan favorite. So what was being reported earlier was that the players had turned on Higuera.
Is that so?
Yeah. That
was it because of the of the way that they were being treated like the baseball team in Major League with the owner that wanted to sell the team,
withholding their payments and so they were. I think it was on the flight back from Toronto when they reported that Higuera was trying to talk to the players, to the coach, and that they were just giving them the cold shoulder.
Wow.
So yeah, and I was expecting the opposite. I was thinking, because the Anda coming in, that he was gonna have more leverage. Almeida obviously wanted Galindo Senior there on the side.
Sure.
But who knows, man? Who knows what happens in that novella? But yeah, he could stay. I mean, I know he wants a national team. I know he would like a national team or to go abroad, but
well, I'll tell you, there is. I keep, and the more I think about it, especially if he wins this tournament. I mean, we ran out in the poll. Now, not that many people voted on the poll, but I thought it was very interesting. On the poll that we ran last week on our Twitter handle, I guess, was it of the people that voted, the majority the overwhelming majority that won was that people want like a systems guy to come in and coach the national team. The next.
Oh, that's right. You were.
My very scientific poll. And I just think that at this point, Mexico is who they are. I mean, Could they get better? Sure. Could they get worse? Sure. But I mean, it is what it is. So why don't you bring in a guy that's going to give you the best chance of advancing in the thing that you covet the most, which is tournaments?
Is the next qualifier? Is it the last hex, or is it going to be?
I think that some confederations are pushing FIFA to make the next World Cup the 48 team one, but
yeah, they don't want to wait, huh?
No, they don't want. Yeah, because they want their 7 teams in. Yeah, but so I don't know if that's going to happen or not. But yeah, but in all likelihood, it will be the last hex. Well, that's a tournament too.
Yeah, well, I've been critical on Almeida, John. You
have been.
You're more.
You write them hard. I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean, I will say, Joel, that you do, but your criticism is almost always constructive. I mean, it's not out of hate that you criticize them. You're not just. You're not a grenade thrower. You're very valid in your criticism, but you're also will be the first to say, "Hey, man, this guy's doing this really well." Yeah. So you always give credit where credit is due.
No, yeah,
you're fair. You're fair with him.
He's a good in cup tournaments, but I'm saying his home record, it's pretty bad. If you go season through season, the amount of wins Chivas has had at the Akron, it's very few. And even big wins, there's almost like none. There's like maybe a 3-0 versus Cruz Azul like 2 years ago. So, I mean, I think that's one thing you need, and at least during qualifiers. You need to win at home and you need to win big.
Right.
And that's the long qualifiers. What is it? Like around 16 games, 14 games?
Yeah, 14. They have the little quadrangular, and then
so that's
six there. It's 16 games.
That will be my worry, not that, but I mean with the amount of with the amount of boletos going, he should be fine. So he might not llegar de panzazo, to the tournament, and that's where the whole thing kicks in, where it's like, especially with Osorio having done such a great tournament. I mean, are the fans and is the media going to say, you know what? Well, he's the short turning type of guy. Are they going to be patient?
Almeida's, what you just said pretty much proves that Almeida's a decent coach, maybe a good coach, but not a great coach. He's not gonna bring a national team or even a higher level team than Chivas to anything great. He pretty much said he was an underdog against Tigres.
How can you say that though? I mean, well,
that's what I'm saying.
He's a relatively young guy.
He was an underdog against Tigres. He took advantage of that, and he's doing the same thing against Toronto. The Copa MX was sort of like Copa MX, so he won that. But then his home record, like you're talking about, bottom of the table, currently Liga MX.
Well, in first division, it's even when he was in Argentina, first division, he was always around at the mid-table mark. He was never fighting for the top spots.
Well, if you're in the mid-table mark in the Hex, you go to the World Cup, and then
I don't see him being like. I mean, put the audio shortly, but the
let's not forget.
I don't see him.
And you guys make some very valid points, both of y'all, and it's something to be considered. But let's not forget that it's not as if coaches are tripping themselves and tackling each other to get to Femex Foot to become the next Mexican national team coach.
Well, the money is there though, John.
Yeah,
they're ready to make it rain, and they find the right coach. I
can see back up. I could see him in a low percentage chance of him getting the Mexican job, but it's still a possibility. Osorio, I think, pretty much ruined his chance to get a huge job that I think he was looking for after Mexico.
I mean, Osorio could always renew if he has a really good cup, you know? If he gets to the second round and all he has to do is look good against Brazil. You have to beat them, just look good.
So that they can say just like La Volpe.
Yeah.
Contra Argentina 2006.
I don't think
you
that's
took it from me. It's funny, John. I think we're the only ones that
tuvieron una sola llegada.
John, I think we're the only ones that see it that way. You hear fans talk about it, and they make it seem like it was an epic match. I'm sorry, Chiquis. Take it away.
And I was just gonna say real quick. I think he needs to beat Brazil to get any kind of clout.
Chiquis, come on, man. You don't know the Mexican fans.
No, man, they hate him.
World Cup, you just gotta look good. No, I mean, if you play a good game, that's all you need, man.
No, because
they just don't want to feel bad.
Good game has happened so many times. We're used to it, and with all the hate even the press gives to Osorio,
not so many times, because the 2-0 was pretty bad, and the 2-1 defeat to Germany, that the team looked good.
Argentina, they look good. Well, sort of look good, and then
they were okay.
La Volpe was.
They did not look good.
La Volpe was praised for that. He almost had a chance.
For what? He was praised.
You know what happens, John? I think people confuse or they mix, the memory mesh, the Confederaciones game, which was a much better game.
Right. No, you're probably right. I mean, I say that Argentina game, and they score in the 4th minute, right, on a set piece, no less.
Yeah.
A great goal. Don't get me wrong. And then Jared has a shot like 5 minutes later, and then they do nothing for 100 the other 110 minutes.
But
nothing.
La Volpe was praised for a staunch defense in that game, which is sort of pitiful, but he was still he came out on top. He came out, not too bad.
That's fine to get to staunch defense and then win in penalty kicks. Don't lose 2-1 in extra time.
That's why I don't agree. That's why I'm glad he never got re-signed. And in the same case with Osorio, if he plays. Okay, not bad like Mexico did versus Argentina, but if he has them playing good and they still lose to Brazil, then.
But you know what the thing with Osorio is that he came in mid-cycle, and he's to use
mid-cycle.
Yeah, I mean, that.
He came in after the Gold Cup, and his first official match was the first qualifier.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you can't.
Well, I mean, but to use John's word, he's a systems guy. He came in to implement a new system, to do rotaciones and to do all this, and for something like that, it takes much longer than what he's had. He would have to also have control of like the Olympic team,
We want a system
and the U20s.
Yeah, which he would take that. So I mean, I know I don't like him, but for his thing to work, he would need all of that, and then we could probably see how well it does. Yeah.
So what would you like better as a system, or to be re-signed Osorio, or to have a systems guy like Bielsa come in?
You know what? Even though I don't like him, if the team looked decent, I wouldn't mind if they re-signed them.
Interesting. We need Ronnie to come up.
Bielsa, I like Bielsa, but Bielsa's
crazy. You don't know which one you're going to get.
He'll quit before you could fire him. I mean, he rarely finishes. He'll rarely finish. He rarely finishes like a project. He leaves. He always leaves like halfway through, or not even halfway. So yeah.
Se cansa. Yeah, it's like it's a total roll of the dice with that guy.
You know what? I would like him as maybe like an advisor role, or like a general manager type role, but not as the coach.
You know where I think he would be outstanding, Bielsa would be to head up the youth to where the results don't matter. Just let him coach. Let him, if they're going to play that system, start them to where by the time they're 24, 25, they've been playing in it for 7 years. So they know it backwards and forwards. That to me, if you're going to bring a Bielsa in, that's where you put it.
Well, given his track record, he might end up in Mexico again.
He could very well do that. So Joel, they play next week back in Guadalajara, and they have the Tapatío, which they're going to win. I mean, let's face it. Sorry, Atlas fans.
No, my crystal ball says Atlas takes it.
Really?
Yes.
Well, it's hard to argue with the Walter Mercado of the CantinaMX podcast because it is eerie. We should compare the predictions that you make and just the general policy positions that Fernando had when he was on the show, where his and see who has been right more.
Yeah,
because both of you guys have struck some very impressive have made some very impressive hits with some of your predictions.
But remember, he was the governor. He never owned up. He never owned up to when he struck out.
It happens. Oh, that's right. We used to like he was being questioned.
Yeah.
By the Judiciary Committee.
He would pull some of those out of the ether, but he did. He did get quite a few right.
So Joel, next week, are we going to have to start the show with a?
Man, it's looking that way.
You think so, huh?
Well, I mean, the odds are in favor of the home team. And despite what I've said about Almeida's record at home, you did point something out important the other day to me, and that all his games at the CONCACAF Champions, he's won all the home games.
Yep.
So I mean, that looks good, That's good, and I think the team's hyped, and you have players that they want to go to the World Cup, or they want to be seen, or in back of their mind, if they do miss the World Cup, they know that the next best thing is going to be a Clubs World Cup.
Sure.
So that's big motivation right there, because I know some of these guys want to leave. They see what Chucky's doing, they want to go out there too. There's like Pizarro, Brizuela, probably even Pulido. He's still fairly young.
And Chucky scored another one. He had 16 goals. I want if he's not leading the league, he's tied for first. So he's had just a terrific season. Now, one guy I do want to talk about before we get to the interview with Luis Miguel Chagaray, who joins us to talk, among other things, Group C in Peru here on the CantinaMX podcast. I want to talk about Rodolfo Pizarro, because I know that he's been kind of a lightning para Rayos for us, to kind of a polarizing figure. And it's not that we think that he's a bad player. At least I believe. I just believe that he's just unfortunately is just not consistent enough to take the next step yet. I mean, he might get there someday, but when he's good, he's outstanding, and he was outstanding the other night. He was terrific in Toronto, obviously getting the goal, but just in the way that he managed the game, it was, you can see why people are so frustrated with, like me, because it's like, dude, if he could do that all the time, then you would, if he wanted to, he could play wherever he wanted. I mean, then that's just the reality. And that's where I have frustration with him, and it seems like that's always been more often than not the case with Mexican players. It's like you see the glimpses of how great they can be, and they show it, but they just don't show it often enough in order for them to make that next step. So, is Pizarro capable to take? Is he going to be the one that takes that next step, Chiquis?
I think we talked about it a little bit, and it's coming in, at least into my mind, to be a true fact that he just plays really well when he's like the main guy on the team. Chivas style of play and their tactics and everything have him as the main guy that's controlling the ball and doing everything. And in Osorio's tactics, I don't think that's the case. I think his position in Osorio, anybody can do. Gio can do. Vela can do. Herrera and Guardado can do it. So I think it's just a difference. He has to be in the right team to be able to do well. And with Chivas, he's that guy. But even in Chivas, like you say, the inconsistencies are there, and sometimes he holds on to the ball a little bit too long. But yeah, he's definitely brilliant, definitely very talented on the ball and everything.
He does have a great goal celebration too. I will give him that. I like his. He's got good moves on his goal celebration.
I used to like it, and then it sort of got ruined for me. I don't know mentally after the Chiva Hermana started doing it.
Oh no!
I saw her do it. Like first I thought, okay, Pizarro does it. It's pretty cool. And then she started doing it. Then I go look at Pizarro again, and I'm like, I don't know. That looks like sort of girly for Pizarro to be dancing that way.
So you would prefer kind of like the way Jurgen, when Ronaldo takes off his shirt and does the Jurgen Damm pose.
Yeah, exactly.
Is that what you like?
That's manly. Yep, Jurgen Damm without a shirt on. That's some manly stuff right there.
Jurgen Damm takes your chest like, I dare you to kick sand on this chest.
Yeah, Pizarro probably has like a little bit of hairy man chest there to go. So you should definitely try that.
So if Chiquis, I'm sorry. Should I do Howell and I need to give you a minute, Chiquis? Have a minute of private time here before we move on.
Continue.
All right. Well, see now I've lost my train of thought. You've made me very uncomfortable, Chiquis. No, I'm sorry. I'm just kidding. If Pizarro has another good game, does it merit his inclusion on Mexico's 23-man roster for the World Cup? Because you know who's coming back this week.
Oh.
Your hesitation tells me que no.
If Pizarro does well?
Yeah.
He convinced me this last game. I think he needs to be given a shot. I don't think he'll play that much, but I think he needs a shot.
I said no, but I think it'll put him in the break glass in case of emergency spot.
Oh, when they have the inevitable injury?
Yeah, someone gets injured or you need a player of that. That guy is. He's the guy that criticized, right? He criticized.
Yeah, he was the one.
Saying that.
He said, I was playing in the rombo and I couldn't go wide, and it kind of like I didn't have any room to operate.
Yeah, that he plays himself out right there. Sí, hizo su propio quiebre ahí, quiebre de cintura. Yeah, that's not. You're not gonna get in the coach's good graces like that. And someone like Osorio, you could look bad, but he's not gonna care, because he wants to see what you're capable of.
But what if Giovanni? I mean, because Giovanni's not coming. I mean, he's finally coming back this week. So Giovanni's been out for 6 weeks, yeah. And this was after Giovanni said that he had the best off season of his entire career. Right? His words, not I'm not blowing smoke up, anybody right now. Giovanni said best off season I've ever had, as a professional. And he goes and gets a muscular injury after 2 games, and that's after having to come out after the first one. So what muscles is Giovanni exercising? Is he exercising? Is he doing the heavy lifting of the 12-ounce weights down in Hermosa Beach? Yes, or the quarter pound jerk over at Tommy Burgers over in your neighborhood, Joel.
Old neighborhood. Ya no estoy allá.
I forgot you're over in the OC.
Yeah, heavy lifting of pomos, like Kool-Aid. going to go buy beers after a training. That just
Joel,
seems
be
so
honest.
funny.
Be honest, Joel. Do you miss your Americanista neighbor?
No, I don't.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, you do. Joel.
No, I get
Would you hear? Is it true, Joel, that late night you'd hear that like very softly in the distance?
No.
No, you didn't play
Sometimes
it.
during big games they would throw viewing parties.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I could always tell when the team was winning.
Really?
It'll go crazy.
So
over
you
there.
didn't even have to watch the game. You didn't have to watch the game.
Nah, I'll just hear for reactions.
That is fantastic. That happens here in Austin during UT games.
I know he left an impression on you, John.
I'm sorry?
I know that guy left an impression on you.
Well, you have to admire a man who's so dedicated to his team.
Wait, give me a sec. Give me a sec.
No, that's all right. I will describe what I saw. He was, on a side street there in Los Angeles, and he had the Club America logo painted, on his house. He had a curtain that had the logo on it. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, his house was yellow with blue trim. And he even had, to be sure, in case you didn't already figure out that he was a Club America fan, if when it's dark and the ambulance is coming and he wants to make sure that they know that not only is this my address, but I'm a Club America fan as well, his curb number, the glow in the dark number, was also had a Club America logo on there with his address, just to make sure that that they knew that he was a Club America fan that resided at that location.
And John saw him because he was coming to pick me up. We were gonna go watch a game at the Coliseum, and he went a block. You went a bit too far, right? And you had to make a turn.
I did. I had to turn around.
And there he saw.
I turned around in his driveway. It's like, well, I'm sure this Americanista will allow me to turn around in his driveway. Yeah. So then I asked you about him, and it's Javier Americanista. He was very, very quiet about him.
I had another one.
Okay, well,
just really quick. There wasn't, which I would see when I would drive, and he had a truck, and it was fully painted in America colors, and he had the schools and everything.
Right. That's we do see. Actually, Chiquis has a huge Puma sticker on the back of his pickup. Chiquis represents his team very well here in Central Texas. Well, I do want to very quickly before we talk to Luis Miguel Echegaray, I did notice that Daniel Preciado has joined us from Escondido there in Southern California as well. Daniel, how are you, sir?
Good. Good evening, everyone. Happy to be here as always.
Daniel, your Santos team is starting to waver a little bit. They've had a couple of losses.
I was kind of expecting it, and I think right now it's okay. I'd rather them get the losses, and hopefully they end on a high note.
Yeah. Well, they have a very big game this week. I know the Santos already made the playoffs, but I mean, they don't have to go all. They can play them at medio gas. It's fine against Pumas this week in Torreon. We'll allow it. We'll allow it. And if Pumas can scratch out some points, we'll be much obliged.
How are you guys faring? Is the Liga?
It's still a possibility. Pumas has 20 points. They're 1 point away from the problem with Pumas is their goal differential is just pathetic. So they basically have to win both these next two games just in order to be sure. Because if they're in any kind of tiebreaker situation, they ain't gonna win it.
Got it.
Yeah.
Well,
thanks for bringing it up, Dan.
We'll see what my boys can do for you.
Yeah, please. Yeah. No, we do appreciate it. Although I think Santos is gonna be okay. I think that they'll be fine. Well, Dan, I was just about to start playing the interview that we had got to record earlier with Luis Miguel Echegaray with SportsIllustrated.com. But before we do that, I did want to get your very quickly your opinions on what we saw up in the Great White North on Tuesday night with Chivas.
I'm not gonna say I'm pleasantly surprised. Actually, it was kind of what I was expecting. We didn't exactly get predictions, but I was expecting a 1-1, and then maybe a 3-1 at home. So I was expecting the 1-1, the 2-1. Yeah, it's a fantastic result. I don't think it was surprising at all. I think I discussed it on the show last week that I didn't think that Chivas is nearly as bad as they've shown. I mean, they got to the Champions League somehow, right? So yeah, I'm not surprised that they were able to put on a good performance. They dedicated a guy to shut down Giovinco, which doesn't seem all that innovative, but it's effective. And we'll see if Pizarro can again, like I guess maybe really distinguish himself. But he's the one I'm actually rooting for the most because I'd like to see him as part of the World Cup, but he still needs to.
So he has to pass this last test. He has to force Osorio's hand.
I just don't think he's had the type of season. Even I mean, he's had moments, but I don't think his inclusion is screaming.
So what would in your mind have to happen in order for his inclusion to be screaming?
I think like a complete game, a complete games where he's not where he could find that sweet spot where he's making the right decisions and not just giving the ball away and bad. Not that he did that so much, but I just think that he can play smarter, and I think the team as a whole, especially later on in the game, they should have won that 3-1 easy. And I think they squandered a number of chances.
He needs to score off the dribble or walk the ball in. Since he hogs
what he needs to learn to do is, and his team needs to help him, is somebody has to break from behind him when he's doing that, so that they'll never see it coming. And because he attracts at least two, sometimes three guys, and if somebody breaks behind, not in front of him but behind him or lateral to him, then it'll be curtains if they can figure that out. So once again, Joel, I challenge our loyal listener, Mr. Almeida. If this happens, then we'll know for sure, Joel. We'll know for sure whether or not he listens to the podcast. I think Dan, we're pretty sure that he does because
I got no doubt.
What we described last week, as far as what Chivas had to do to win, it pretty much played out exactly how most of us described.
I think
we're probably one of the few who didn't. Did anybody actually pick Toronto?
I picked Toronto.
Okay.
I didn't pick him, but I did have him as favorite.
Yeah. Joel's crystal ball was too cloudy for him to make any kind of prediction.
Yeah, I didn't predict the score, but I did put him in the favorite category, and from the match they dominated more. Giovinco was off, and then Josie he reverted back to Josie Dozy. He missed a couple, man. Could have had a brace.
Yeah, it wasn't as if you're right, Joel, as if Chivas totally shut them down. I mean Toronto, and they're going to have chances again, just because of the way that Chivas plays, and the way Toronto plays, for that matter.
Yeah, but la presión. I think the pressure is going to be on Toronto, man. Just what it means. Just because look, this is pressure from two nations, and they got some U.S. nationals there, and this is like their World Cup, and then they're the Canadian team, and they've been hurting to win something, so quite the pressure there.
I'll have to admit, I will find it hilarious, frankly, if when MLS does win this, because they will. The MLS is gonna win this tournament. It's gonna happen.
You're saying this time around, or you're saying just eventually?
Just when it does happen, that if the first team that does win it is a Canadian team, it would just crack me up.
Oh yeah.
I mean, seriously, it would just be so perfect. It would be just a perfect moment.
That fact is not lost on the message boards.
How many?
Really?
How many Americans are on the Toronto though?
There's a few. I mean, and two notable ones. I mean, Josie and
how many Canadians? I mean,
are there any Canadians on Toronto? I'll be honest. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I have to claim ignorance.
Yeah.
Probably all extranjeros.
But anyway, I thought that was interesting. Well, guys, if you don't mind, let's get to it. Let's go ahead and bring in our guest, if that's all right with you.
Word.
Well, like I mentioned at the top of the show, we have with us this evening, in our tradition that we've started here in the CantinaMX podcast of doing a World Cup group previews. A couple of weeks ago, we had Tom Harrison join us and talk to us about Group A, particularly Egypt and Mo Salah. And last week, we had Arch Bell from Marca.com talk to us about Spain. And Arch said that Spain, he fully expects them to make a semifinals appearance in Russia 2018. And this week, we're talking Group C. And we thought, who better to bring on for Group C than someone who is very passionate about the team that he follows. Among other things, he is an author, a foodie, a villain, and a writer. He's appeared in Remezcla and The Guardian, and currently he heads up SI.com's Latino and Spanish language content and co-hosts SI TV's Planet Football. He is a Peruano, and we're very happy to bring him on to talk to us about Group C. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Luis Miguel Echegaray. Luis, how are you doing today?
Oh, wow. I love that little intro music. Thank you.
We're very, very happy to have you on, Luis. Now, let's just get it right out of the way from the very top. Why is Peruvian ceviche so delicious?
I mean, the fact that I even have to have an argument for this is kind of ridiculous, isn't it? I mean, there is nothing more succulent, more beautiful, more tasteful than Peruvian ceviche. I mean, ceviche, wherever you want to argue, originated in the coast of Peru. I mean, you can go all along the coast of Peru, all the way from Lima, going down south to where Paracas is, even north, heading towards Arequipa. All of this beautiful ceviche started in Peru. I don't even need to make an argument here. It's the most succulent, most beautiful ceviche that you'll ever have.
Now, one of our fellow cantineros who's not with us at the moment, but Rigo Ayala, who grew up in Michoacán, says that hands down, Peruvian ceviche is the absolute best in the world. Now, Peruvian ceviche, there's sweet potato, sometimes potato. There's, I mean, I grew up with ceviche acapulqueño, which is tomato based,
right?
And you just don't necessarily see that at all in Peruvian ceviche. And I did have a chance once. I was working a college football game in Miami, and it was our set day. I think, well, it's time to go to lunch, and we found this cevicheria peruana. I was so excited, but it was closed.
Oh,
so
no.
I didn't get a chance to have some of the Peruvian ceviche. So hands down, Peruvian ceviche best in the world. I'm hoping that there's a cevicheria peruana here in Austin, but we'll have to. Chiquis, have you ever found a Peruvian cevicheria here in Austin?
No, I'm a ceviche noob. I've only had it once, and that was in Virginia.
Oh.
So that was what I was going to ask Luis was, I know you're in New York, and I don't have hopes for Austin. My belief as far as Mexican food is there's no Mexican food that's like really authentic unless you're in Mexico. But in New York, where's your preferred place for ceviche?
Yeah, no, you know what? That's a very good point. Sometimes you have to really go back to where it really originated to get it. But luckily, being in the U.S., being a country of immigrants, sometimes you find some little jewels. New York is actually very lucky when it comes to Peruvian food. I mean, the immediate answer would be Jackson Heights, right? So the center of Latino-centric. Urubamba is a very good Peruvian restaurant in Jackson Heights. El Anzuelo Fino, El Pollo Inca. One of my very good friends, moving away from Queens, one of my very good friends has a restaurant. I'm going to do a shameless plug for him right now, but he better give me a free meal. It's called Panca in the West Village. It's great. It's fantastic food. And they make a great ceviche. And as you said, John, about the potato. Yeah, there's so much potato influence when it comes to our ceviche, but we also do some good stuff with shrimp as well. So,
well, it's a good thing I haven't had lunch yet, because I'll be honest, you are making my mouth water. Now let's jump off the ceviche, because I don't want everyone to have to go get a quick bite to eat. But we do want to talk soccer, and my first question is, I do follow you on Twitter, and I've noticed that you don't necessarily tweet as much about Peruvian clubs as much as you do about Aston Villa. So my question to you is, how did the Sorting Hat pick Aston Villa for you?
Yeah, I mean, if people have heard me before, know my story, they know that it's a little, I guess you can say, interesting. I guess you can say a little bit complex. I'm Peruvian, but I actually left Peru when I was 12, and I moved to England and moved to North London, and I moved to an area where it's particularly heavy with Arsenal and Tottenham fans, and particularly heavy with Greek and Turkish communities. And because England is not really, well, it is now, but when I moved in the early 90s, it wasn't really that Latino-centric. People would look at me, and the Turks would think I was Greek, and the Greeks would think I was Turkish. And I'll be like, no, I'm Peruvian. And they would say, I don't know what that means. So
where's Peru?
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, so I wanted a team to root for as soon as I moved to England, and I didn't really care so much about Arsenal or Spurs. And at that time, as you know, it was the beginning of the Premier League, the brand new Premier League, and actually Aston Villa came second in the very first season. But anyway, I didn't have many friends in my first couple of years there, but I did make one really good friend. I still know his name. His name's Mark Russell, and he was a huge, gigantic Villa fan. And he said, I'm an Aston Villa fan. And I was like, oh, okay. So his family, every home game, we would take the train from London all the way to Birmingham. We would go to Villa Park, and that's really where it all started. And I've been a Villa fan ever since. And when Alberto Solano played for us, it became two birds with one stone kind of thing. So I've never really stopped being a Villa fan.
That's great. Now, was that the Andy Gray years back in the early 90s with Villa?
Ron Atkinson. And then as I grew older and got in high school with Brian Little, John Gregory. But yes, Andy Gray played in the 80s, and then I came a little bit later in the early 90s. But Ron Atkinson was basically the main manager that got us to that level. And then we had Juan Pablo Angel, who still to this day is one of my heroes. And
sure.
Benito Carbone, and all this all these South American and Central American players that came from Villa. It's always been great to see. So, and I'll never stop being a Villa fan.
and where's Villa right now? Are they in the playoff hunt for promotion, or are they in direct qualification?
Well, yeah. So Wolves, as you know,
right,
got promoted, automatic promotion. They clinched an automatic promotion. Definitely the best team this season in the championship. As if your listeners don't know, the championship is the first two are automatic promotion, and then third to sixth is a playoff situation. And Villa right now is fourth.
Okay.
So it's very tight right now. Between Cardiff, Fulham, and Aston Villa fighting for that second automatic promotion spot. There's a few games left, but to be honest with you, I really enjoyed us being in the championship, because Aston Villa for a very long time in the Premiership was really doing nothing. It was horrible to watch. It was Sunderland-esque, and it was at least now in the championship with our new owner, at least there's competition amongst the league and stuff, and we have some great talent, and hopefully we'll see us in the Premier League very soon.
See, for Liga MX fans, we would call that they're the Atlas of the Premier League.
That's not a bad comparison.
Very Chaflas-like for Aston Villa. Now, I've personally, I'm a Pumas fan, and I've had the good fortune of having Pumas be in the first division as long as I've been alive. They were promoted in the early 60s, so they've been in relegation fights. Do you find a relegation fight and then consequently a promotion fight 1,000 times more nerve-wracking and exciting than you would say, a championship fight at the top of the table?
That's a good question. I think that So going through a relegation fight is never fun. Nerves are always racking in. When Villa eventually got relegated from the Premier League, it wasn't even like a fight. The fight was already done. Villa had been done. But I think that right now this competition to get that second automatic promotion spot has been really, as a neutral, really super interesting to achieve. I mean, I talk about Villa a lot, but Fulham, who have such a great history, they're doing interesting things. Ryan Sessegnon being a 17-year-old left back for Fulham, who's just got nominated for Young Player of the Year. Cardiff with Neil Warnock. So it's been fun that in terms of trying to get promoted to the Premier League. I would rather be this than in mediocrity in the Premier League, like 11th or 12th place.
Sure. And I personally have always thought that the championship, as far as leagues in Europe, is probably like the fourth or fifth best league in Europe. But it's so incredibly competitive that I think that it could hold its water with Liga 1 or Eredivisie, any of the other quote unquote first division leagues in that are in the continent. It's a very, very difficult place to win promotion. So it's
I completely agree. And Wolves have proven now that what Nuno Espírito Santo has done, the coach. He's taken in players like Ruben Neves from Porto, and then Jota, who is a loanee from Atletico Madrid. All these really great talent at fast-paced, physical English style, British style soccer. It's been great to watch and see develop.
Now, your other love, obviously, is Peru, the Blanquirrojos, and I know that you were born in the early '80s, so you may have been alive during '82, but you probably don't. I would assume you don't remember that World Cup. So it's been. Well, I don't want to throw numbers around, but it's been 36 years since Peru had qualified for a World Cup. So, as a Peruvian, and then with your family, everybody else, I mean, how incredible was it for Peru after all these years to finally make it back to where a lot of us, at least someone like me who grew up watching Peru play, thinking that it's a country that should be a constant, a standard bearer in the World Cup. How great is it for Peru to finally be back in the World Cup?
I mean, yeah, every time I get asked this question, I always say, John, it's very hard to describe it into words because of just the emotional, historical, as you mentioned, just everything that goes with it. It's incredible, to be honest, and it's really more than just a game or entering the biggest tournament in football. It's just an incredible feeling. You're right. I really don't remember much about the last time we were there in '82. But if anybody reads my stuff, especially not even just Sports Illustrated, but before that, when I was with The Guardian, I would really talk about the emotional connection that most people my age, I'm 36, 37 this year. Most people my age, have with La Blanquirroja because of our parents and just, this kind of connection that you have with the team. It's an incredible moment. And it comes down to many reasons, not even just because we haven't been, as you said, since 1936, but there's been a lot of heartache too. I don't have to go too much into it, but there's been so many things within both domestic-based soccer in Peru and international, so many things that have gone wrong and so many, so much sadness. We've had our own, not to compare it, obviously, Chapecoense is a tragedy within itself, but in the 80s, Peru, Alianza Lima also had a similar, tragedy. And, so we've gone through so many things and also I'm not even including about the fact that we're in the toughest World Cup qualification, group ever. CONMEBOL, is so ridiculously impossible. And the fact that we did it when Brazil had to take part, not even in Brazil 2014 when they didn't even have to do it, is amazing. So it's an amazing feeling, and every Peruvian will tell you the same.
Sure. For those who don't know, what Luis is referring to is, I think it was 1987. There was a plane crash that killed the entire Alianza Lima, not just players, but coaching and support staff. I think it was like 44 folks ended up perishing in that, and a lot of folks believe that was the base of the present and then also a future national team. So it took Peru, as one would expect, a very long time in order for them to recover from such an awful tragedy. And
yeah,
and on top of that, Luis, you see, you know, with Peru having that, and then you see teams like Ecuador and even Bolivia, teams that, you know, at least when I was growing up, were like the doormats of CONMEBOL, come up and take those World Cup spots. It had to be just incredibly frustrating for Peruvian fans to see these teams that for years you guys would just, you know, swat aside like flies. All of a sudden, you know, they're the ones that are taking those spots too.
Yeah, it was very frustrating. I mean, especially, and it wasn't even just about, I mean, you got to give credit when credit's due, right? Many organizations like Ecuador, especially in the last, you know, not this recent one, obviously, but as you said, and Paraguay and stuff would take, you know, certain spots. But it was also just like, you know, the 98 World Cup, we didn't make it through goal difference, you know. It was just, you know, we were the almost team, you know, it's just right there. And it wasn't even just that, it was just in matches, if we were leading 1-0 or 2-1 with, you know, 25 minutes to go, every single Peruvian would tell you, yeah, we're going to lose this. And it was true, and we did. So I know that we're going to get into it later, but that's why I really commend and you know, salute and thank Ricardo Gareca for everything that he has done and his coaching team, because he didn't just change what happened on the field. Like, psychologically, he transformed the mentality of a Peruvian player, and that's big.
Now, I grew up in Mexico, and my first World Cup that I remember watching, where I do have vivid memories of, was Argentina in 1978. And as much as Mexico was terrible in that World Cup, because they only scored 2 goals and allowed 12, and you know, they were on the business end of the first African victory ever in a World Cup when Túnez beat them, and then they got shellacked by the Germans, etc. As terrible as Mexico was, Peru was outstanding. And it's one of the reasons why I've always had a soft spot. You know, I've always had like a crush on Peru, because, you know, when you're 6-7 years old and you see, you know, crazy good goals like the goals that Peru scored, at least in the group stage, because they didn't get any in that stage. It's a country saying, wow, you know, this is fantastic. And then I see him again in Spain, and I remember being home. They tied Italy 1-1, and they had they tied Cameroon, and then I'm thinking, here we go, we're going to see Peru again. And then they got just shellacked by Poland.
Yeah,
and I think Boniek, who was playing with Juventus at the time, had a hat trick, and Peru never to be seen or heard from again in a World Cup. So I personally, I think it's fantastic that Peru is back in the World Cup, and even in the 70s and 80s, there were a lot of Peruvians that played in Liga MX at the time, and a lot of the now they didn't necessarily have the impact that some of you see, like some of the Argentines or Paraguayans or even Colombians in Liga MX, but there were a few guys that did have a major impact in Liga MX, and the one that I remember vividly was Jerónimo Barbadillo, El Patrulla, who was fantastic for Tigres. It was at the time when Tigres, Pumas, and Cruz Azul dominated the league, won 2 titles with them, and made such an impact on Tigres that they actually retired his number 7. Now, there have been other Peruvians that have gone through Liga MX. Julio Cesar Uribe actually played for America and coached Tecos, although he didn't really have, obviously, the impact that he had for Peru as he had in Liga MX. And then for my team, Pumas, El Cobra, Juan Jose Muñante was outstanding. And then the perennial captain for Peru, Héctor Chumpitas, actually played for Atlas. Poor guy.
Right.
Poor guy. Oof. Oof. But he was Peru's captain for a better part of almost like 15 years.
Absolutely, he had like around 105 caps for Peru. Chumpitas is you know, not, you know, obviously renowned and well known in Peru and loved. Maybe not to the level of Cubillas, but especially just being a defender. But, you know, considered definitely one of the greatest South American defenders ever. You know, starting with Universitario in his youth career, and like you said, with you know, Atlas. With, you know, he was one of those rocks that you didn't really see, and he was only 5'6", by the way.
Wow, that's crazy.
So, you know, which always makes it so much fun to see. You know, just as a rock at the back. You know, just representing everything that the Peruvian was. Not very tall, but with 2 hearts.
And then more recently, at least, you know, within the past couple of decades, Juan Reynoso was actually one of the. He was on Cruz Azul's last championship team, so that's how long ago he played in Cruz Azul. He was on the team, on the squad when they won the championship in 1997. Now, you mentioned Cubillas. Now, again, Cubillas is. I mean, I would have to consider him the standard bearer for Peruvian football, even to this day. A gentleman who played in 3 World Cups, 12 years apart. Played here in the U.S. and NASL, and just a great. I mean, he used to be a television commentator in Mexico. I think he was even on Univision for a bit. Where is Nene these days?
Nene is based between Florida and Lima.
Okay.
He has an academy in Florida. He does, and he's actually going to be part of the Telemundo team for the World Cup.
That's fantastic.
This summer. So that's going to be great to see. As you said, he's pretty much the pivotal factor when we discuss Peruvian soccer, and specifically when people who are not Peruvian discuss Peruvian soccer. I think Cubillas to this day represents everything. Aside, as you mentioned, in the World Cup, also the 1975 Copa America, when he scored against Brazil in the semifinal, and then, playing in the playoff match in the final, and also, just Guerrero beat him to now the most goals scored by a Peruvian internationally. But I think one of the things that is interesting about Cubillas is the fact that, as you mentioned, just his career was celebrated not just in Peru, but in the United States, internationally. One of my favorite memories ever is actually the very first time I saw him live, which is when he returned to Alianza Lima to play for free, just as you were talking about the 87 crash. And, my dad took me to see him, and it was just one of those moments when you just say, wow, this is not just a soccer player. This is a hero.
Yeah, and a lot of folks have the good memories of Cubillas because, I mean, he wasn't just scoring goals, and he was scoring veritable golazos.
Yeah,
and we actually ran one a few months ago here on the crossfooted and we got in trouble by from FIFA for airing, but it was his free kick against Scotland where he cross-footed the goalie and toe poked it into the goal. It's a fantastic goal. I'm glad I am looking forward then to seeing him on Telemundo because I've actually always liked his commentary as well. So he should be he's also an entertaining guy, which makes it that much better.
Yeah, I met him a few years ago, just in that restaurant that I was talking about, my friend's restaurant. We had a nice, it was a sort of a charity event. We were trying to help, kids in Peru, and Cubillas came, and he talked about his life and everything. And I sat next to him. My dad is not with us anymore, and so it was just, I could just feel like the emotion just sitting next to him. He signed a ball for me, and he signed it. Todo lo mejor campeón. He called me campeón, and that ball's still on my desk at Sports Illustrated, and I never stop looking at it because it's just one of those amazing moments.
Yeah, that's fantastic to have, not just to get to meet somebody like that, but then for him to have the kind of message. That is pretty amazing. Now let's talk Peru now in this upcoming World Cup. There isn't. If you look at all 8 groups, you can't say like in the last World Cup where there were like 3 or 4 just incredibly difficult groups. But of the 8 groups that are in this tournament, I personally, and we were talking about this before you came on with Albert, that Group C and Group D are by far the toughest ones. And with Peru matching up with Denmark, Australia, and France, I do think France is a favorite, but it is a free-for-all for that second spot. I don't think that there's one team over the other that thinks, oh yeah, we're gonna take all 3 of those teams have a real good chance to make it into the next round. And Peru, if I'm not mistaken, they start off with Denmark, and then they have France in the middle and finish off with Australia. So that Australia game could be a determining factor for them if kind of a win and they're in. So based on the group, how do you feel Peru's chances are?
Yeah, John, actually, you know what's funny? I mean, obviously, France is on paper the favorite. And as you rightly said, the competition for everybody else is really that second spot. I got to tell you, Australia scares me more than either France or Denmark. And I'll tell you why. We have an issue, I think, still and Gareca will totally agree, I think, that when it comes to playing against creativity, athleticism, smart tactics, I think that we're good because Ricardo Gareca is so good at learning the opposition. I think that obviously on paper, France is the one to watch out for. But to be honest with you, Australia scares me more than all the other teams. And the reason is because Peru as a squad and the way that we play, Ricardo Gareca is very good at analyzing the opposition, and he'll have a plan, as you saw against Croatia and Iceland. But I think that the biggest obstacle to climb are when Peru is faced with a team that's the proverbial brick wall, right? Somebody that, I mean, it's not so much that they're going to park the bus, but that they're going to be very physical and kind of rely on the aerial game. Janinak, an Aston Villa player, actually will do a lot to try and disrupt what's happening. And I think that Peru can struggle with that. So I think that might be the biggest. And being the fact that it's the last match of the group, and depending how we're doing, a lot of pressure might amount. So, of course, France scares me. Of course, they're an incredible team, one of the best in the world. But to be honest with you, just like you saw France play against Colombia and Peckerman outwitted him, Didier Deschamps, to me, tactically doesn't impress me. We got to remember that in the qualifiers, France was a team that couldn't beat Luxembourg at home. Right, so there are moments when I think they could struggle. Obviously, Kylian Mbappé is going to be a future world player of the year, I think, and you saw Antoine Griezmann, etc. But I don't. When it comes to tactics and outwitting somebody, I have all my faith in Gareca. And with Denmark, I think it's about just like we stopped the play of Modric and Rakitic with Croatia. I think Eriksen easily, if we can figure him out, I think we can figure out the majority of creativity from Denmark. Australia is different because they're going to come together as a compact physical unit. And that, to me, is something that I worry about.
So it seems like, based on what you're saying, that the schedule favors Peru in the sense that they're going to have the game where they're most comfortable first against Denmark, against a side that based on the way you've been describing it, that they can probably not only play their own style, but kind of handle the style of the Danes first. Obviously, if they get a win there, it's fantastic. And then they play France, where let's say, as a fan of Mexico too, when you go up against the A-list teams, it's, you hope for a win, you pray for a tie, and if you lose, you hope that the loss isn't one of those losses where it could knock you out of the World Cup as a goal difference. And then the last game is against Australia, the toughest game for you in your mind, in order for them to qualify. So they have, and I think Mexico's kind of the same way, where they have two group games, and then they have what I would call like the round of 32 game, the game that's going to decide whether or not you make it into the knockouts.
Yeah, I think Mexico and Peru have similar paths. I think you're right in saying that. And also, let's not forget about what will happen when Paulo Guerrero, hopefully when Paulo Guerrero rejoins the squad, because honestly, I think Koscielny is great, somebody like that, Laurent Koscielny, the center back for France, but he's going to really struggle against. I think this is the other thing. European teams don't understand just how good Paulo Guerrero is. He dominates so much in the air, probably the best player to hold the ball in South America. And, after Robert Lewandowski, to me, I don't see a better number 9, to be honest with you.
And when is Guerrero slated to rejoin Peru?
Yeah, it's a tricky one. So right now, he has to face the Court of Arbitration on May 3rd. He has appealed. His lawyers have appealed for him for the 6-month ban to be completely annulled. He was already meant to join in May anyway, but they're asking to completely get rid of it. But at the same time, WADA, the anti-drug organization, have asked for an extension of a 1 to 2 year ban. But that's more of a reactionary thing. They have to do something. They can't just let Paulo Guerrero's lawyer say something to Court of Arbitration. Anyway, May 3rd, I believe, is when the final decision will be made. And I don't know, according to what's happening, there's a lot of optimism. So hopefully the answer will be that from the beginning of May, he'll be able to fully take part in everything, which is why Peru still have organized 3 friendlies before the World Cup starts.
Sure. Now, maybe Paulo Guerrero will channel another Paulo Rossi, who in Spain, 1982, was coming back from a match-fixing ban, and then ended up completely catching fire, at least in the second round, and became the World Cup Pichichi, and of course led Italy to a World Cup championship for them. So that's certainly something for Spaniards to look forward to. I'm not sorry for Peruvians. I'm getting my nationalities mixed up. Now, if Guerrero for some reason does not make the squad, does not play in the World Cup now Peru does have their ace in the hole, the Monarca. We're talking about
La Pulga Peruana.
That's right, Rui Diaz, who is playing for Morelia, scored probably the biggest goal in Monarca's history a couple of years ago to keep him up. But he did get red carded over the week. Now I have to ask, we have been searching high and low for a Monarcas fan. Are you the one guy in the USA that watches Monarcas games religiously?
Yeah, I probably watch Monarcas games more than anybody in the US, mainly just to see Raul do his thing. He already scored one of the most amazing goals I've seen in a while this season. What's funny? He's not even really guaranteed a start. He's not even a starter for Gareca. It's really mainly Farfan taking that number 9 role.
How old is Farfan? What is he? He's like in his mid-40s? I mean, he's been around for...
I mean, he's close. No, he's not. He's 33.
And he and DeMarcus played at Eindhoven together, did they not?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow. And Farfan now with Lokomotiv Moscow. He scored an amazing free kick last weekend, I believe. He was with PSV after Alianza Lima. Then he went to Schalke. Then he did then there was the 2015-2016 period when he went to Al Jazeera, which is when Gareca really had nothing. Like, we got to remember, Farfan really took no part in the beginning of qualification.
Sure.
And mainly was because Gareca, and this is where Gareca comes in again. He demanded 1,000% commitment, club, country, discipline, mental stability. And Farfan, it took a while for him to wake up, but finally he got with the program. And of course, he became one of the heroes against New Zealand. He's very important for Peru right now. He's the number 9 with Carrillo on one side, Cueva right behind him, and then, La Oreja on the left-hand side, Edinson Flores. So he's very, very important. He's kind of, taking the role of Guerrero at the moment. But Rudias really right now is not in the starting 11. We'll see what happens when we get closer to the World Cup. But he comes in and he scores very important goals. And, he's pivotal to this squad.
No, he isn't the only Peruano that plays in Liga MX that has chances to make the World Cup squad. I know that Advíncula also plays in Mexico, Pedro Aquino.
Yep.
And the Polo Gallese. Now he's a goalie, but I'm assuming that he may, if he makes it, he'll probably be like the second or third goalkeeper. Alexi Gomez has an opportunity to make the squad, as well as Cristian Ramos. So Peru, like we've seen other South American countries in the past, we saw Paraguay in 2010 make the quarterfinals with somewhat of a Liga MX based squad. With that, in fact, I remember the quarterfinal against Spain. Verón had to come in and did a fantastic job against a game which, frankly, Paraguay should have won. They had some weirdness with some penalty kicks that happened in that game, and it was very unfortunate for them. We've seen Colombia use a lot of Liga MX players in the past, and Ecuador has done the same thing. So this is, again, outside of the Brazil, Argentina, Uruguay triumvirate, where they have, thousands of, well, maybe not Argentina, Uruguay, but a ton of players that play abroad. Mainly in Europe, where they can build a base, but a lot of South American countries have looked at Liga MX to advance their careers and get paid well, etc. And it looks like Peru is going to be no exception. They'll probably end up having about 3 or 4, maybe even 5 guys on the squad that will come from Liga MX teams.
Not only that, John, the players that are in Liga MX are very important. Gallese is actually our number 1 keeper.
Oh, he is I thought he was a number 2 keeper. Okay.
No, number 1. Well, now it's going to be an interesting fight, because our number 2, Cáceres, he was fantastic during these international friendlies, to the point where many are now his spot is definitely safe with the squad. Now people are talking about the competition for number one should be interesting, but Gallese has normally been our number one. Christian Ramos was the captain during these friendlies, really pivotal at the back. Lucho Advíncula is definitely going to go, and it all depends what kind of match we play. I think that if we play Denmark, depending on how pacey the opposite winger is, it'll be between him and Aldo Corso. And then in France, I think the same thing. But Lucho Advíncula is definitely a very important player. He also had a very good set of international friendlies when we played against Croatia and Iceland. Aquino is a squad member. He gets about 15 minutes, 10 minutes, but he's very talented. And Santa Maria is also another one that's interesting because, after Christian Ramos and El Mudo Rodriguez, Santa Maria took over that role next to Christian Ramos, and he was pretty good. He had a few lapses of concentration, but I think that he's gonna make that squad. Gareca prefers him to somebody like Cayens, who plays for NYCFC. So those players are very important to Gareca, and they all play in Liga MX.
Okay, Luis, I got a question real quick, Luis. This is Albert Campa. I see that there's maybe a couple of players that are in MLS at the moment from the national team. Do you see players becoming more attracted to the MLS, partly because of salary and maybe because of incoming players like, European players like Zlatan and others that might come? Do you think the attraction would be more so to go to MLS instead of Liga MX, or what do you think of MLS as a future for Peruvian players?
Yeah, no, it's a really great question. To be honest with you, I actually, the first part, of course, the salary is always something that's interesting. But I wrote a piece for Sports Illustrated last month, and it was about the very subject of how MLS is going in the right direction. Not so much because of your Zlatan Ibrahimovic, even though it's great to see somebody like that come, but that's not the foundation of the future of this league. The foundation and the future of this league is young South American talent coming to different teams, like Ezequiel Barco going to Atlanta United, or Jesus Medina going to NYCFC. I could go on. And Peruvian players are no different. Andy Polo going to Portland is a good thing, because I think this league is in a pivotal time now where finally the teams are understanding that the talent, the structural foundation of each franchise is based on these young, hungry, experienced players that have played in Copa Libertadores, but also have so much experience within their own clubs. Andy Polo is no different. And the Peruvians that are in MLS right now are all, really good look to be on the squad. Maybe not so much Jordi Reina. We'll see what happens there. But somebody like Yotun, for Orlando, I think will definitely be part of it. Andy Polo as well. So I think that it's a two thing. I think it's what you said, the salary, but it's also they are seeing just how much South American talent is heading to MLS, and I think that's nothing but a good thing.
Now back to the World Cup, Luis. I always want to ask people two questions as far as expectations. What does the heart think, and what does the head think? So what does the heart think for you for Peru's expectations in the World Cup? Where do you see them ultimately? Like what is their, how far are they going to get? What does the heart say?
We're going to win it.
The whole thing. Okay.
I'm kidding. I honestly, listen, Costa Rica made it to the quarterfinals in 2014. There is no reason, if you're talking about heart right now, there is no reason why that can't happen.
Okay.
I think Ricardo Gareca should have won Coach of the Year last year. He's that good when it comes to tactics. And I think that getting out of the group stages is a real reality. And I think getting even further, the maximum quarterfinals, why not? That's my heart. My head says that I think that we can get out of this group. After that, I'm not so sure. But
why is that? Why do you think it's not so sure? Who would they probably play in the round of 16?
Yeah, I have to do my research again. Maybe you guys can help me, but I think that's when it gets tricky, right? That's when you start playing against
Argentina.
Yeah. So I mean, hey, we tied against Argentina. In Argentina,
sure.
it was definitely a battle, but I think the World Cup would be a different situation. But I think it also depends on how Argentina themselves are doing. I mean, there's already been so much, criticism as you can remember, in terms of the friendlies and what they did against Spain. But that's a friendly, and the World Cup is the World Cup. So I think the reality from both sides, head and heart, is we can get out of this group. What happens after that, then it's just about praying and making sure that the team knows what's up. But I have so much belief in this coach and this team that, to me, it's not more about, let's celebrate the fact that we're just here and that's the only reason. No, I think we can cause a lot of noise.
If Peru does make it to the quarterfinals, are you and other Peruvians going to grow your hair out long and have that Gareca hairstyle to celebrate Peru's achievement?
John, if I could, I would grow my hair out. I'm fading a little bit at the back, but I would buy a wig. I will name him president. He already deserves everything. I think even if we don't get out of the group, his contract should be renewed. He has done so much for the squad and the mentality of the nation in terms of the game. But he deserves everything. And I really hope also that this is a moment where non-Latinos see the beauty and the strength and the smartness of coaches in South and Central America. I really think that. I think people like Ricardo Gareca is a perfect example. You're somebody that doesn't really follow South American soccer that much, might not know that much about Ricardo Gareca. I think this is a perfect opportunity for them to see, and also to see Peru. And the final thing is, honestly, you got to remember, this is a young squad. You take Guerrero and Farfan out of this, the average age is 24 years old. So, this is a really young Peruvian team, and the fact that they're in the World Cup is amazing.
And, add to that the fact that the chances are pretty high that when the World Cup expands to 48 teams, that Peru will once again become a mainstay, one would hope, in the upcoming tournament. So if this is a young team, it looks like the best days for Peru are definitely ahead of them because of the fact that they are so young, and as you said, and if you've pointed out repeatedly, that they're extremely well coached, which is something that is equally as important. Now, a couple of questions before we let you go. First of all, since we are kind of Mexico based in this podcast, how do you see Mexico's chances playing out in the World Cup?
You know what? I'm very confident of Mexico getting out of the World Cup. Obviously, your question is about that, the fifth match conundrum, right? I think this is a really...
Right now, a lot of us are not even sure they can make it to the fourth match. But
I think I'm an optimist by heart, John. So I think you can do it. I think it's more about, listen, I think that you need to take what you just saw against. I think, unfortunately, what happened for you was when Croatia sent back their best players for the friendly, and you weren't able to see what talent could do against somebody like Modric. I think Iceland was an okay match. I think the struggles are kind of similar to Peru in terms of, Mexico's biggest issue is what I saw in the Confederations Cup, which is defending against the counter. I think that, to me, is the key. I think that's the problem. When they face Germany, a Germany B team, whatever you want to call it, that was the biggest issue, which is what do you do in transition? And I think that if Osorio can fix that, I think you have a better chance than most. Obviously, when you look at that group, the very first match against Germany is going to be, pivotal. But in a way, I kind of see it as a good thing that you play them first.
There's no question. I mean, the schedule breaks out very favorably for Mexico, just like it does for Peru. They have the match against Germany is pivotal in the sense that I don't think any Mexican has the expectation that Mexico is going to win that match. I mean, a draw would be outstanding, but if they lose, which is in all likelihood going to happen, you can't lose by more than 3 goals, because if that happens, then the goal differential, as we know, is the first tiebreaker. But then you have Korea, and then you have the winner take all against Sweden. So it definitely breaks for Mexico, just like it did in the Confederations Cup. The schedule is very, very, very favorable for them as far as them advancing. I'm still a little bearish on Mexico just because of what you just said. It's not necessarily just the counter attack. I think it's just the defense in general. Osorio puts so much pressure on having his team, push up the way that they do, and they don't really have that defensive midfielder to cover for the defense. And if the other team breaks, then things could definitely get very ugly. And it's something that he hasn't been able to solve in the last couple of years that he has been there. Now, one last question before we let you go. What are Planet Football's plans for the upcoming World Cup? Are we going to be seeing daily reports? Well, what are we going to see from Planet Football?
Yeah, you're going to see a lot. There's going to be a lot of written content, daily reports on matches. You're going to see a lot of video content as well, both from across all our social accounts. We're going to have commentary both in Spanish and English. I can't get too much into the details, but there's a lot of good stuff coming, both obviously digitally and otherwise. And it's one of my biggest jobs, if not the biggest job for me at Sports Illustrated, is to make sure that we represent the Latino and Hispanic community. And that's not just, our biggest audience, which is, Mexico, but I'm talking about South America and Central America. And I want to make sure that the World Cup is represented the right way, because in many ways, the United States is at the World Cup. And that's because this country is made of immigrants, and many Colombian, Uruguayan, Argentinian, Costa Rican, Spanish, Mexican, Peruvian, Brazilian. They're all also, there's many American citizens here that need to be represented, and that's what we're going to aim for Sports Illustrated.
You sound like Pedro Bermudez when he says hello to all the nationalities when he's calling. But you're absolutely right. I mean, I know that there's a lot of folks that say, hey, look, the United States has bought the most tickets, and it's exactly for the reason that you just said, because yes, there are American fans that are going to the World Cup tournament. There's no question about that. But there are also a lot of folks that live in this country that are going to be going to the World Cup, that are going to be supporting, whether it's their home country or their parents' home country, whatever the case may be. So it's for soccer fans, what's going to happen in the next 2 months is what we live for. I know he wasn't able to join us today, but I know that one of our cantineros, Joel Aceves, says that his life is based on 4-year procesos. He likes the he feels like he really culminates his life every 4 years, the World Cup. And I do kind of feel the same way. I mean, I was very lucky to have grown up in a country where when the World Cup is taking place, every television channel has World Cup content 24/7, and it's what I'm used to, and it's something that we kind of missed here in the U.S. And I think that we finally got to that in the last couple of World Cups. So it's something that is great to see, and I think that it's I mean, it really is, to me, the greatest sporting event on the planet. Nothing even comes close. I'm really looking forward to it. And who does Peru beat in the final?
Wouldn't it be beautiful? I mean, I would just fly in Chile just to see it, right? To be honest with you, like the other favorites that I see are teams like Spain and Brazil, but I think it would be before that we would reach them before we even get to the final. But
right, well, you would see Brazil in the final because they're on the other half of the bracket. But exactly. but you'll play Spain. Once you beat Argentina, then you'll play Spain in the quarters. So it won't get any easier for the Blanquirroja on their quest to make the final.
Which is why, John, we need to remind the audience, this is the heart speaking. This is not the head.
Right,
speaking.
right. No, I understand completely. No, this is the CantinaMX. We're a little more irreverent. This isn't very serious soccer talk. We're more. It's we do a lot of analytics and stuff. We're also fans as well, and that's why I enjoy.
Listen, I'm a big fan, and I think you're doing a great job. It's been so awesome to be on it, and to be honest, it's I keep doing what you're doing. We need more of it because I think it's important to have this kind of great content and representation, and keep on hustling because I love it.
Well, we appreciate you coming on. Thank you very much for hopping on the CantinaMX podcast. And good luck to you and all Peruvians this summer in the World Cup. And we're looking forward to seeing them make the knockouts. And hopefully they will catch lightning in the bottle like they did both in Mexico 1970 and Argentina 78, where they had just exemplary tournament. In fact, one thing I have read about the 1970 team that really kind of took the world by surprise was, I think Pelé and all the Brazilians said the toughest match we had was the quarterfinal against Peru. They ended up winning 4-2, but they said that was far and away the toughest match that they had in that whole tournament.
Yeah, I remember that, and I gotta tell you, like honestly, like when I read about it, and my dad would tell me about it. Honestly, if that match I mean, Brazil ended up winning the whole thing. Can you imagine if Peru had won or whatever? Obviously, it was fighting against one of the best squads ever made. But yeah, I remember reading that. It's quite amazing. Quite amazing to see Peru back at the World Cup. Arriba Peru.
I want to see when they play Argentina in the round of 16. I want to see the sign that says "Recuerda 1969." For the Argentines.
Well, I know. So remember, Ricardo Gareca was the one that pretty much took us out of World Cup contention back in the 70s as well. So it's funny that it goes full circle.
That's
remember,
right.
Our coach is Argentino, so that should be even more interesting.
Well, Luis Miguel Echegaray, thank you very much for joining us here in the CantinaMX podcast. We will definitely talk again. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
That was Luis Miguel Echegaray that joined us earlier today here on the CantinaMX podcast, and we were very, very happy to discuss Peru and their chances in Group C. Obviously, he's very bullish on Peru, and who wouldn't be? I mean, after a 36-year absence, to at least in his lifetime, he was only one year old when Peru last made the World Cup. To not see your country participate in the World Cup and then the final seed, I'm sure has to be just thrilling, not just for him, but for Peruvians all over the world. So we are back live here at the CantinaMX podcast with our esteemed panel, as it actually has grown a little bit. We were while we were away, so to speak. We did notice that our esteemed colleague from Philadelphia, a gentleman who needs no introduction, but we're going to go ahead and give it to him anyway if I can find it. There it is. Let's see. So then, at least if he's asleep, you would hope they would wake him up. But he has.
Here, John.
Okay. All right.
What's up, guys?
Ron De Luna joins us from Philadelphia. Ron, you said 2 weeks ago when you were last with us, and you were very, very clairvoyant in your comments that you said you probably weren't going to join what turned out to be last week's show because no querías mostrar la cara for what you thought was going to happen. And sure enough, it happened, and America got bounced, and like a true Americanista, we didn't see or hear from you for a week.
Yeah, John, I just locked the door and I started crying. I just finally got out. No, I was expecting it. For not so much that I thought that they were going to play bad. I just didn't see the urgency in the team going after this tournament for some reason.
Yeah. So you're like John Turturro in what was it, Miller's Crossing. You're like, look into your heart, and there was just nothing there from America.
I just didn't see the urgency, Not saying that the players didn't try. I mean, I'm just thinking it from the top to the. I mean, Toronto and them. I mean, the league gave them, preference and stuff like that. It's like gave them time, rescheduled and stuff like that. And it's like Liga MX, obviously, and not that happens. I mean, even when we used to play Copa Libertadores, I mean, sometimes
games on the same night.
Exactly. So it's like. I kind of knew that that Toronto came in better prepared in terms of in terms of the altitude, in terms of scouting and stuff like that, where Tigres fell victim to it, America fell victim to it. Obviously this is pure speculation, but if Chivas was probably up right now in the standings. And with a legitimate shot at the title for Liga MX, I think that they probably would have not cared about this tournament this season. But I think Chivas needs this. I think Chivas needs this more than America need than Tigres.
Why do you think Chivas need it? Is it because they're just so separately awful in the league?
Yeah. So, I mean,
is this the worst? Is this the worst Chivas team you've ever seen, Ron?
No.
What's that? What's that?
Is this the worst Chivas team you've ever seen, Ron?
Are you going to celebrate it, Joel? I mean, if Chivas wins it?
Yes, I will.
I mean,
international tournament, Ron.
Joel is going to fly to Guadalajara and go to the Minerva.
Minerva's full of tears.
But can we consider it a Prode championship or no? Or is it
No,
no,
no.
I'm kidding. No.
It's the official
Speaking
tournament of
speaking of the of celebrating at the Minerva, there's a meme that I saw with Necaxa, and it was Don Ramon, and he was the only one at the Ángel de Independencia in Mexico City celebrating. It was Photoshop, but it was hilarious because it was just like at the Angel, there was nobody there, and he was just the only one celebrating Copa MX.
That reminds me when at the Mente,
You sound
Cancun, and the fans organized like a protest to for the move, and like 4 people. Terrible. I shouldn't laugh about that, but it was just absolutely terrible for and that was the original Superclásico, wasn't it, Ron? The Atlante Necaxa rivalry.
That was one of them because you had the Spanish teams, you had Asturias and you had España, and then you also had Necaxa and Atlante. So Mexico City, obviously, the Primera Fuerza, which was the league, had you had España, Asturias, Atlante, Necaxa, América. They used to go at each other's throats,
What is it about Don Ramon that every time I see him, I just die laughing. I remember Martín del Palacio for a good year, it's like 4 or 5 years ago, had on his Twitter handle a picture of Don Ramon lying like Michael Jackson on the cover of Thriller. Man, it just killed.
He's like a cult status, Like I remember, like one of the last times that I was in Mexico City, and I told you guys, like every time I go there, I always make it a point to at least spend at least 2 full days over there by Calle Donceles, where all those antique books are at, because that's where I find magazines and stuff like that. But it never fails. I'm always fine. I was everything. Was like pirated and stuff like that, but you'd see like posters and shirts of Cuauhtémoc, as a statue, or in Don Ramon. I would always find those 2 images, and obviously the wrestling images, but Don Ramon just would crack me up, dude.
Yeah, it just he had such a great career. He was. Yeah, he was a Chanfles coach. You can't get any better than that. That was just outstanding for Don Ramon. So back to, I know that we had a chance to listen to Luis Miguel Echegaray, and I was hoping that you guys were going to join us, but I know that sometimes our schedules don't work the way that we want, and that we want to make sure we can accommodate our guests when they come on. But he like I said, he's very bullish on Peru, which is great because like I mentioned in the interview, I've just have always had a kind of like Peru to me is just I've had a romance with them as far as how they, but just because when I was a kid they were just so fun to watch and were just a really entertaining team, and I'm hoping, I don't think that this Peru is that entertaining, but it's great to see a team like that back in the World Cup, and hopefully they can at least make it to the knockouts and then see where it goes from there. So I'm really I don't know if y'all feel the same way about Peru. It's I know, like for someone like Dan, you've never seen Peru in a World Cup at all, so it's like Peru's like whatever. So
it's not whatever though. I'm looking forward to seeing them.
Yeah. And I will say, for national team uniforms, they are very recognizable. You see a picture of them, you know exactly who it is, and you can't say that for a lot of teams.
There was a nice gesture from Cubillas when the under-17 team that won in Peru, with Vela and Giovanni and all those guys.
That's right. It was in Peru. I forgot about
that. The coach Jesus, he actually had Cubillas go into the dressing room, give them a pep talk. Give the guys a pep talk about about winning and stuff like that. And if I recall, I remember the interview, Cubillas was a little upset that Peru's coach, or the delegation, didn't reach out to to players like of Cubillas and the stars and stuff like that to try to motivate these young kids. And it's like, I couldn't believe it that, here you have the Mexican coach asking us to go into their dressing room and motivate, their players and stuff like that. And it's like, well, what about our delegation? So that was I thought that was always a really nice gesture from Cubillas to do that.
And as we said, and I've seen him on TV, he's going to be on Telemundo for the World Cup, which is fantastic because, I mean, what a great guy. I mean, he's entertaining. And he's, obviously he was a great player, and he just, he's, I'm sure, and if I'm not mistaken, he was on the when Andres Cantor had his Fútbol de Primera radio when they broadcast the World Cup games. He had I think Cubillas was part of that crew. I'm not sure if that's correct because, frankly, the crew was very big, and it was. Those are very entertaining radio broadcasts. I don't know if y'all ever catch any of if you didn't get to watch it on TV, listen to World Cup games on the radio with Andres Cantor, like a cast of thousands. It's very entertaining. As you were saying, Ron.
No, so no, actually, I totally forgot about the plane crash from Valencia Lima. When I was hearing the recording, totally forgot that, and it's like, man, that's kind of like bad luck because I mean, like when Peru went to the 1970 World Cup, there was a couple weeks before they were about to head out to Mexico. The country had a massive, or Lima had a massive earthquake, and Peru's delegation, they were like, on the verge of not going and attending the World Cup in Mexico. But, I just...
That's right. And then that tournament, it kind of helped the country heal a lot.
Exactly.
It was a very unifying experience for the
that.
Peruvians. Yeah.
Because it's like, they were playing for their countries. Well, literally, to try to get, give them some something to smile about, with the tragedy that was going back home. But I totally forgot about that plane crash, because I was like, man, just it decimated their team for years.
It did, and I was reading up on it this week actually, and there were a couple of really young players that were, kids that had been, were teenagers still, but had been playing for the team for 3 or 4 years, and they were considered the future of the national team, just like these really talented teenagers. And it took Peru. It took them a long time to recover. And and at that time, and I was thinking about this when I asked them, we saw the rise of Ecuador and Colombia to a certain degree, although they were, and I guess Colombia. And I got to thinking, especially about Ecuador. Is Ecuador like Iceland? Did they get better because they played a los moleros against Mexico?
Well, Ecuador, they had their first World Cup was in 2002, and they had the Copa America in '93. So they started to throw more money into their program. Going 10 years back.
Right.
So that probably had to do with it, and not to take anything away from Colombia's great teams, but that narco money also helped them out a lot.
They also opened up their team to their more athletic players.
Yeah. So, I'm not saying that that's the only reason, but money. When they were throwing the narco money around, those teams were reaching the finals of the Copa Libertadores and stuff like that. So they got more exposure, and obviously Europe started to watch them and see these players. So I think it had to do with more, with investing more money or putting more money into their programs, and obviously with Ecuador, with the Copa America in '93, that's actually the year that Mexico went. That was their first participation in Copa America.
Do you remember who knocked Ecuador out of the tournament?
Mexico did.
That's right. That was his first goal in 7 years. That goal that he scored in that game was his first one in 7 years with Mexico.
That's why, like, for me, Mexico playing against a host nation, it's like we tend to do pretty well. Be it Brazil, be it South Africa, be it you name it, we actually do pretty well. And when we face host nations.
But
anyhow,
US all the time.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But yeah, and I don't know. It's just I think I mean I was reading some articles, because this, early this year, obviously there's like how many, 13, 14 something Peruvian players that are in Liga MX.
Right.
So I think they're starting to invest more money, making more money. So, I mean that always helps.
And as Luis pointed out, this is a very young team, and as we know, as the World Cup expands, which it's going to, not necessarily the next one, but the one after, then Peru should be, they should play in the World Cup moving forward. One would think, if especially if they have a good tournament.
So now one question.
Yes,
it's already a done deal going to 40 teams, right?
48.
For shit.
Yeah, it's so CONMEBOL, I think what I saw would get 7 teams, so 7 out of the 10. So if you're not one of the 3 that qualify, you must, it's going to be harsh. Yeah, so they get 7 teams.
I think you're going to expect. To see them, in World Cups, and for me, it's like.
Well, the reality is that I would rather see the 7th South American team in the tournament play than like the 6th Asian team or the 10th African team or the 6th CONCACAF team. Yeah,
without a doubt.
I mean, because at least I'm not saying that they're going to win, but they're not going to lose 10-0. If they play, France. So that's what I would like to say. Now, I do want to touch on a very sad subject this week. That this is the last game that's going to be played at the Estadio Azul, which was at one point the Estadio Azulgrana. Ron, if I'm not mistaken, it was called the Palacio de los Deportes at one point.
Was it Ciudad de los Deportes?
Ciudad de los Deportes. El Estadio Olímpico Ciudad de los Deportes. That's right. And
the first, I think it was the first. Not the first concrete stadium in Mexico, but the first concrete stadium in Mexico City.
And if I'm not mistaken, it was built when they dug out the Toreo, the Plaza Mexico right next to it. The soil that they used, that they excavated to build that, they used to make the bricks and the concrete and cement to make the stadium there, which turned out to be the Estadio Azul. And it started off not as a soccer stadium, but just like CEU started off as a college football stadium. They played college football there before they ever played soccer, which I thought was very interesting. And everybody but Pumas, like Necaxa, there was a home for Necaxa. It was the home for America. It was the home for Cruz Azul, obviously, and then for Atlante. And if I'm not mistaken, didn't Atlante, the one title they won, weren't they playing at that time? The Azulgrana, was that their home stadium at that time?
That was their home ground. That was their.
And it looked cool because they did the pattern of the seats was blue seats, whatever that color is. What do you call that color? Claret, burgundy, whatever, and then blue. So just in a nice little pattern. It looked really cool. I saw a picture of it this week. As the histories are going by.
Hold on, I'm trying to remember. Atlante won when they were in Cancun.
Right.
They won another one.
Yeah, they beat Pumas.
They won one with La Volpe when they beat Monterrey.
Right. And that's it.
And so, no, but so no, did Atlante? I'm trying to remember. Did Atlante also win when they're like in the 40s and 50s?
They may have. I mean, at least in the modern era, I knew that was all. That all they accomplished.
Yeah.
And and they actually, and the first ever NFL preseason game that was ever played outside or in Mexico at least was played at that stadium as well. So that stadium has quite the history. And so what's going to happen now you guys might correct me. Like I think this is what the deal. The Cruz Azul is going to build a new stadium, and they're going to build a new stadium. Is it on the existing ground, or they're going to go somewhere else? But in the meantime, they're going to go back to where they played before at the Azteca, which you know what might not be such a bad thing for Cruz Azul to go back to the Azteca for a little bit.
So hold on, is it a done deal that they're going to build a new stadium?
That's the reason why they're leaving, because if I'm not mistaken, and I could be wrong, I have to double check, but I believe what's going to happen is that the stadium's going to be demolished and they're going to put a new stadium at the same site. and in the meantime, Cruz Azul is going to play at the Azteca.
Now
I could
know
be
that,
wrong, but I think that's
now
what's going to happen.
What's going to happen? What's going to happen with the bull ring? Because from what I understand, attendance and popularity of the bull fights are pretty low. In fact, that's why the dude from remember the owner from Veracruz, Rafael,
Which one?
Rafael Herrerías, yeah. Forget, el doctor.
Who drew the short straw at the country club to become the next owner of Veracruz?
Yeah. You know who I'm talking about? Rafael Herrerías or something like that. He used to own. He was one of the owners of Veracruz, and I know he had some investments or monies in the whole bull bullfighting sport, but he got out of it because he said that they're just losing money hand over fist.
Sure.
So I'm wondering. I wonder if that's gonna get torn down. Do you know if that's gonna get torn down?
I'm not sure. Honestly, I plead ignorance, but what I will say though is that very close to where I used to live, we used to live next to another bullfight. It was called the Toreo, and it was just south of Satélite on the Periférico, and that was torn down, and that's now a shopping center. And in fact, the shopping center is called El Toreo Shopping Center, or whatever, the Centro del Toreo, whatever it is. So that doesn't. It would not. I plead ignorance. I don't. I'll be honest. I have no idea, but it would not shock me if the Plaza Mexico at some point goes away. But also wouldn't shock me if it stayed either. So I have to admit, I just don't know. So does Cruz Azul? Do they make? Are they already out? Did they? Did they do it to themselves? Joel, are they done? Are they in Chivas done?
Yeah, they're out of contention.
Yeah.
La Cruz Azulearon.
So we could go ahead and play the.
I'm afraid I just blew myself.
Yeah.
Call time of death on Cruz Azul season with Pretty Boy Caixinha as their coach. He'll be back next year. One would expect.
Hey, what's the deal with? I've been so busy the past couple of days, but I've been reading something about Caixinha and Gullit. Like they've been having some beef.
They cut Gullit going. Yeah, the lavadera. The word of the lavadera was right after a training session. Gullit went to the nearby liquor store and he went to buy a bunch of booze, and he got caught red-handed.
Yeah, but then, on top of that, then Mauro Bocelli said that Gullit has problemas extra cancha, that if he, once he gets straightened out, then he'll be back to being the player he was. So, yeah, poor.
It's pretty bad. I mean, I wonder if there's something going on. Because he went from national team material, literally one of the best Mexican, and overall best Mexican.
Played in a World Cup game.
Yeah, well, I mean, he's in that pool. If he said if he said what he's shown he could be, he's definitely,
and he's one of the few players that can really pull off a nice Jerry curl. I mean, that's.
Well, I was actually going to say about his Jerry curl. I think the Jerry curl's cute when you start off.
Yeah.
But I mean, after a couple of years, I mean, really, it's like when the Cure got back together, thinking, "Wow, the Cure's on the Tonight Show." And it's been 25 years since they last performed. You're thinking, they're going to come out and look, and then Robert Smith comes out, dressed like a ghoul.
God.
And you're thinking, dude, you're over 50. Do you really have to dress like that? Can you just come out?
Makeup? I don't know, man.
Yeah. So that's.
Yeah, something happened to Gullit, man. So give him the doll and
cut the Jerry curl. Gullit.
Now, I think I was watching the news earlier today. Now, I think Rafa Marquez, is retiring after this match day, if I'm not mistaken.
I don't
that
think
is the scuttlebutt.
What's that?
He's retiring, but I think
So I mean,
he still wants to play up until the World Cup, something like that.
He wants to go to the World Cup. He wants to retire as a player and then retire at the World Cup.
Would you grant him that?
Could you imagine Puerto Rico if they sent Rafa Marquez on the World Cup team, but not Pizarro?
Well, different positions. But Marquez has, but I'm a bit confused because Marquez he's part of the player syndicate, right?
Right.
And he's kind of trying to go up against a gentleman's pact. So I mean, why would they want him there? What you do with players like that, you don't give them a platform. You just make them irrelevant.
Maybe you do. Maybe you kind of soften him up by sending him to the World Cup and say, "Hey,
butter him up."
Yep.
Yeah, because there's this recent talk, right? They want to have a strike or something like that.
Oh, I mean, I have heard that they wanted to strike. I don't think that will happen, personally, but they have mentioned it, and I think I think what the players are asking for, and I wish they would just ask for, just hey, when our contract's up, let us be free agents. Give us the opportunity as professionals to seek out our own deals, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Oh, that's not going to happen, John.
They can do it in every other country but Mexico.
Yeah, but there's still some type of like you're gonna have teams poaching players, especially from Europe, and taking them for free. And we've seen what happens when they do that. They usually don't value the player. They'll just end up giving them a few games and then loaning them out to a bunch of other clubs. But we've seen it with some of the players that left that way. Everyone loses.
Okay, but I mean, so again, it's okay for them to move freely everywhere else in the world except Mexico.
Well, I don't think everywhere else. I think it happens in
everywhere else. No, I'm saying that a Mexican player can go after his contract's up can go anywhere else in the world without any problem, except another club in Mexico.
Yeah, I mean, but at that point they're sort of screwing over. Like Pulido, he did a number on Tigres. They invested so much in him, and then he just took off, and he left for free to Olympiacos, which
they got their money back.
Yeah, because of Chivas, Chivas was desperate. But had that not been the case, Pulido would have been riding away in like some second division team right now. Greece.
But a player has that choice. I mean, not every story is going to work out that way. I mean,
no, I know, but I just put myself.
But the point is that he would rather do that, like that's the option, or why couldn't he go from Tigres to another team?
No, I think he was I think he was ill advised because even Tuca agreed with me.
I'm not disagreeing with you, Cole. And this isn't a specific. But I'm just saying, why can't he have that same opportunity he has everywhere else in the world? Why can't he have that in Mexico?
Well, I mean, you just have to have it like in advance. Usually, like a year in advance.
Have what in advance?
That you're going to leave because
why? Because you do. It's called the final year of your contract.
No, but this way you let the club work with you. So, for example, when Marco Fabian returned to Chivas, he returned with a clause that if there was an offer from abroad, he would be able to negotiate it. They wouldn't price him out. Same with Titan Salcedo, and that's a reason they both left. The club didn't hold them back. So I mean, you could do stuff like that. I think the clubs will work with you, but I suppose that like all of a sudden I just think there's ways of doing it.
No, I agree, but I mean it's not all of a sudden. I mean your contract expires, right?
Yeah.
So why is it that a player can't decide where he can play. Why is it that he gets moved around?
Yeah. Well, I mean, when they expire is because they can't come to an agreement. So you'll have player wanting more money, which was Lani's case. He wouldn't match his wage, so he wouldn't resign. And you got the case that we saw recently, where some Spanish team is willing to take him once he's a free agent, and then Chivas is just freezing him out. Was freezing him out.
So once again, he can move anywhere else in the world as a free agent except somewhere else in Mexico. That's what the players want to get rid of.
Well, I don't know, man. I mean, I'll have to be on the other side to see what's the reluctance from clubs to not want to do that. And I do feel that's part of it. That's part of it. But this guy was saying, which was Higuera, was saying that, that overall they are overpaying the players. So we might get to see something where a percentage of players are going to be paid really good, and then you're going to have a bunch of other players that are going to be making way less. So maybe that's a good thing where they're going to want to play harder to go abroad.
Exactly. So lost a couple of guys. I guess we could wrap it up here. But that's the whole point. Was that that's what they want to get rid of in the Pacto de Cabo. They want to get rid of the player, the teams controlling the players after the contracts are expired. I don't see why that's such a sin that the players can't have that. I mean they're professionals. They should be able to, given the opportunity, once they have no contractual obligation with the side, they should be able to decide freely where they can go.
Doesn't the team lose money though if that happens?
But how do they? I mean, if they wanted to make money on it, then as I said, in the last year of your contract, or at that point you say, hey, we're gonna you sign a 6-month whatever it is, and that's part. And then they can do that part of the transfer fee. And I get that, but the thing is that that doesn't happen for every player. But then player A, his contract is done, right? And the team can then block him from joining other teams because they can't.
Yeah, that's pure corruption.
And that's what the Pacto de Caballeros is.
Yep.
And I mean, if players are allowed free agency, then I think it would be. It's like that everywhere else in the world. Why can't it be like that? And like I said, a Mexican player, once his contract is done, can go anywhere he wants except another team in Mexico.
It's because these guys, all they care about is money. All they want is the money. So,
yeah.
I think I've said it before that they need to get hit hard to where it hurts. And I don't know if losing Conca champions to MLS, losing South American players to MLS might do that. But
well, we've talked about that last week, and Luis brought it up when we were interviewing him. He said that MLS is starting to get more and more young South American players, and if MLS South Americans end up being better than Liga MX South Americans, then there's going to be games are going to be a lot more competitive between the two leagues.
And I think I've seen something change, because I remember years back we would always say Liga MX pays, if you're going to make money, you go to Liga MX instead of MLS. But now it's the opposite. It seems MLS can pay the players better. I think even Piojo said so, or some coach said so. It might have been Tuca or Piojo. And if that's the case, then MLS is going to become the better league, the better attraction.
Yeah, I mean it's only a matter that it's. Which is why if I were a young Mexican player and I get frozen out like that, I'd go, wait a second, Minnesota United, needs whatever. Maybe I should go talk to them.
This might be good though, because if Liga MX loses South American players, the better ones. They need to maybe change their system and focus on the canteras, focus on the youth, and start building up teams
instead of
becoming the importing league.
A guy from the third division in Uruguay.
Yeah.
Who? Yeah, exactly. Well, Chiquis, it looks like everyone has abandoned us for some reason. I guess was it something we said?
Yeah, last minute obligations or something.
Yeah. Well, it's well, we had regardless of I know we got a chance to briefly talk to Dan earlier, and then Ron came on for a few seconds. But it was great to have Luis Miguel Chagaray join us here on the CantinaMX podcast. We do appreciate him for that. And as always, Chicas, I was hoping we'd get some phone calls, but we did not get any calls tonight. I thought that we might get a few, but we'll hopefully we'll have that again for our show next week. So, Chicas, I meant to ask you that do you see Peru advancing in the round of 16?
Yeah, actually, I think they do. I don't think it's going to be as hard as what Luis was saying, but I do get his point about the bunkering that these guys might do. But I think they got a good enough team to if France messes up, possibly get into first place.
Yeah, France is not going to
avoid Argentina.
France is not going to mess up, but I do think that they can advance. In fact, I'd have to go back, but I think that we may have all been unanimous in picking them right after, like in our immediate after the draw predictions that we made. And of course, like I mentioned earlier, I'm going to probably choose them either way because I like them. But yeah, I mean, they have a very good chance. That the game against Argentina is going to be difficult, but I think that Peru is one of those teams that kind of knows how to get under Argentina's skin a little more than others because they do play them on a more regular basis. And if they can hold on and get a set piece goal, I think that would be a very sound strategy against Argentina, knowing how they have struggled to score in the World Cup, especially in knockout games. I know they've made a couple of finals, but at least in the last World Cup they barely eked by in the knockouts and then penalties in the semis. So it could certainly work for them. And then then they would probably get Spain in the quarters. So that would be great to see. Peru make a run like just any team that we're not used to seeing make runs like that. I think makes World Cups interesting. But then obviously usually the best of the best rises to the top in World Cups, as it almost always does.
Yep.
So it's been a while since we've had somebody new make their first World Cup final appearance. It's been a good long while. So maybe we will get to see that in Russia 2018. Chiquis, thanks very much for all your help and getting all this set up as you always do. And thanks for hopping on earlier with Luis as well. And thanks to Joel Aceves, who had to jump down, as well as Ron De Luna and Daniel Preciado. A big thanks to Luis Miguel Chagaray from SI.com for joining us here on the CantinaMX podcast. My name is John Jagu. Thank you all for joining us. Do appreciate it. We are on here live every Thursday night, usually around 9:30 p.m. Central. And we go on for about 2 hours, usually probably closer to 2.5. And you can also download this podcast and all of our previous editions from the podcast center on iTunes. And of course, you can also subscribe to this podcast and it'll be automatically updated on your device, which we would love. And a big thanks to everyone that does that. We do appreciate it. My name is John Jagu. We will talk to you guys next week. Thanks for joining us here on the CantinaMX podcast.